Originally aired on October 17th, 1990, the Bardock TV special is no doubt one of the most universally praised pieces of Dragon Ball media that wasn't penned by Akira Toriyama. But even though I love the Bardock TV special, I'm not here to talk about how great it is or how incredible that song from the special is, Solid State Scouter. I absolutely love that song. No. But we're not going to talk about that because there's something more important to talk about here. And that's the fact that the Bardock TV special probably has the most annoying title in the entire Dragon Ball franchise. And so on this edition of Dragon Ball Dictionary, I'm going to break down this title and in the process show that there's a whole lot of people out there who completely misunderstood this title. When the Bardock TV special was brought over to the US by Funimation, it got a brand new title.
Bardock, the father of Goku.
However, the original Japanese title is quite different and much longer. ドラゴンボール Z たった一人の最終決戦フリーザに挑んだ Z 戦士カカロットの父 Yes, that's a long title, although you could say that it's a title and then a subtitle. Either way, it's long. But what does it mean? Well, I wish I could just say, it means this, thanks for watching, see you next time. But if that was the case, I wouldn't have made this video. No. It's not that simple. It's way more complicated than that. You see, it all depends on who you ask. If you ask a Japanese Dragon Ball fan, there's a pretty good chance that they'll say something quite different from the English translations of this title. So first, let's take a look at what some notable people and websites in the English-speaking Dragon Ball world say it means. First up, let's see what Geekdom 101 said it meant.
A final solitary battle. The father of Z-Warrior Kakaroto who challenged Frieza.
How about Mr. Fusion?
A final solitary battle. The father of Z-Warrior Son Goku who challenged Frieza.
And let's check out Kanzenshu. A final solitary battle. The father of Z-Warrior Kakarot who challenged Frieza. And finally, here's what I found on Wikipedia, the Dragon Ball Wiki, and Reddit. According to at least some Japanese Dragon Ball fans, every single one of these translations is wrong. Okay, so then what's going on here? Well, there's two issues. One is a smaller issue, and actually, not every single one of the English translations I showed you got it wrong. But the other issue, well, that one is a whole lot bigger. It's the thing that convinced me I needed to make this video, and it's the kind of thing that fuels linguistic nightmares. So let's begin with the small issue. If you look at the text of the title, there's a part where you can see Goku's name written in kanji. It's the full name, Son Goku. However, the title does something weird in this situation. Rather than reading his name as Son Goku like you normally would, you're supposed to read it as Kakaroto, his Saiyan name. Listen to how Masako Nozawa reads the title. You can hear her say Kakaroto.
たった一人の最終決戦フリーザに挑んだ Z 戦士カカロットの父
Reading the kanji for Goku's name as Kakaroto is not something that people would normally do. So it makes sense that in some translations, people would go with Son Goku rather than Kakaroto. However, in this case, you're supposed to read it as Kakarot or Kakaroto, so the translation should reflect that. All right, so let's get to the main event, the part that made me hate this title. Over a week ago, maybe like a week and a half ago at this point, I was working on a script for another video. The research for that video led me in the direction of the Bardock TV special. Now, it'd been years and years since the last time I'd seen the Bardock TV special, so I didn't even remember what the original Japanese title of the TV special was. So I came across a title, it's wordy, like all Dragon Ball Z titles tend to be, and that was that. I didn't really think too deeply about it. But since I was going to be using that title in another video, I needed to check what the official English translation of that title was. So I looked it up, and to my surprise, the translation was not exactly what I was expecting. So my initial impression of what this title meant was something like this. A final solitary battle, the Z-Warrior who challenged Frieza, the father of Kakarot. Basically, my initial impression had been that the term Z Senshi or Z-Warrior referred to Bardock. However, in every single English translation I came across, the term Z-Warrior referred to Kakarot. So because I found this inconsistency in how people were interpreting this title, of course, I had to go down this rabbit hole. And well, I spent so much time on this video. But like I said earlier, while I was looking on the Japanese side of the internet, I came across two people who explicitly said that the term Z senshi, or Z warrior, refers to Bardock. So I'm going to share two quotes with you. This first quote is from a Japanese article about the term Z senshi.
Also, there was a TV special called たった一人の最終決戦フリーザに挑んだ Z 戦士カカロットの父 Going by this title, Bardock, who is the father of Goku, should also fall under the Z Warrior category.
And here's the second quote. This one is from a Japanese Yahoo Answers page in which somebody asks people to list off who qualifies as a Z Warrior. The author of the quote is one of the people that responded to that question.
And when it comes to Z Warriors, you can't forget about Bardock. He appears in a TV special called たった一人の最終決戦フリーザに挑んだ Z 戦士カカロットの父 So, he's a confirmed Z Warrior.
And aside from these two individuals, I've also come across people on X who have written posts that strongly suggest they interpret Z Warrior or Z Senshi as referring to Bardock. So what is going on here? Why are Japanese Dragon Ball fans disagreeing with the interpretation presented in the English translation? Well, the thing is that this last part of the title is annoyingly ambiguous. Specifically, it's the structure of this last part of the title that's ambiguous. And because of this, it's possible to interpret Z Warrior as both Kakarot and Bardock. Which interpretation you arrive at depends completely on how you break up this phrase in your mind when you hear it or when you read it. In the case of the English translation, Z Warrior equals Kakarot. That means that the people who did those translations I showed you split up this phrase in between idonda, which means challenged, and Zeddo Senshi, which means Z Warrior. If you do this, then Zeddo Senshi modifies Kakarotto, and so you arrive at the Kakarot interpretation. In the case of the other interpretation, what's going on here is that the people who interpret it that way are splitting up this phrase in between Zeddo Senshi and Kakarotto. And so because of that, Zeddo Senshi doesn't modify Kakarotto, it modifies the entire next phrase, which is Kakarotto no Chichi, the father of Kakarot. And who is the father of Kakarot? Bardock. So then how do we know which is the intended meaning? Sadly, as far as I'm aware, there aren't any official sources that make this 100% clear. But as I pointed out already, there are Japanese people who think that Zeddo Senshi refers to Bardock. So that's pretty good evidence, but it's not conclusive. So in an effort to find more conclusive evidence, I kept looking around the Japanese side of the internet. And then I found something. On a lot of Japanese websites, including Wikipedia, when they write the full Japanese title of the Bardock TV special, there's a space in between Zeddo Senshi and Kakarotto. And by the way, in case you don't know Japanese, it's not normal to insert spaces in between words. That's just not how the language works. So clearly this is being done in order to get rid of the ambiguity in this subtitle. As I pointed out earlier, when you insert the split in between Zeddo Senshi and Kakarotto, it makes it clear that the intended meaning is for Zeddo Senshi to refer to Bardock. And then in another interesting case, I came across somebody on X who didn't just place a space in between Zeddo Senshi and Kakarotto. No, they went above and beyond, and they used a dot. So this strongly suggests that a lot of people in Japan interpret Z Warrior as referring to Bardock. But some of you might be thinking, Bardock a Z Warrior? That doesn't really make sense. And for the most part, I agree with you. Now, the term Z Warrior is problematic, kind of stupid, and vague, but we're not going to talk about that in this video. If you want me to talk about that, let me know in the comments. Instead, what I want to focus on is the fact that Z Warrior and Kakarot just don't mesh together well. Kakarot is who Goku was supposed to be. Kakarot was sent to Earth to conquer it. But Kakarot bumped his head, he was raised by Grandpa Gohan, and he ended up becoming a protector of the Earth. So if we accept that a Z Warrior is a protector of the Earth, someone who fights to protect the Earth and, in a larger sense, the universe, then yes, Z Warrior describes Goku accurately. But the term Z Warrior doesn't describe Kakarot accurately at all. So if that's the case, then it would be weird to have the term Z Warrior refer to Kakarot. But here's a counter argument. It's also weird to have the term Z Warrior refer to Bardock. Bardock dies before the start of Dragon Ball Z. He's just some random a-hole saying, he's not a protector of the Earth. But perhaps what the title is trying to do here is use the term Z-Warrior for dramatic effect. Yes, technically speaking, Bardock shouldn't be considered a Z-Warrior, but what the title might be trying to do here is to highlight his character journey. He goes from some random a-hole Saiyan who goes from planet to planet wiping out entire populations to someone who decides to challenge Frieza. He decides to stand up for his people. And so maybe the title is saying that through these actions, Bardock became an honorary Z-Warrior. He became a Z-Warrior in spirit. Do I like this? No, not really. I don't think that Bardock should be called a Z-Warrior, but I'm doing my best here. I'm trying to make sense of this title. But I have one more piece of evidence for you. So when I noticed the ambiguity in the title, I decided to reach out to a former professor of mine. I emailed Dr. Shinichiro Fukuda at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. He's an expert on Japanese syntax. In other words, he studies the structure of the Japanese language, how words come together to form phrases and sentences. Before I tell you what he said, I just want to make it very clear here. 1, he's not a Dragon Ball fan, so he doesn't know all the nerdy information that we do. 2, he based his analysis on the information that I gave him. And 3, of course, he doesn't know what the person who wrote this title was thinking. So because of this, it's not like Dr. Fukuda can say, oh, this is what it means. But I still wanted to get his opinion. Fortunately, he responded while I was still doing the editing for this video. So thank you, Dr. Fukuda. And well, here's the answer. You can see it on screen right now. But basically the short version is 1, yes, it's ambiguous. 2, given the way this is written, given the space that I mentioned, it seems like the intended meaning is Z-Warrior equals Bardock. But unfortunately, none of the evidence that I've presented today is 100% conclusive. Although I'm still leaning towards the Z-Warrior equals Bardock interpretation, I can't completely rule out the Z-Warrior equals Kakarot interpretation. So basically this leaves us with 3 scenarios. Number 1, Z-Warrior equals Bardock. If this is the case, then every single English translation of the Bardock TV special title is wrong. Number 2, Z-Warrior equals Kakarot. If this is the case, then there's a surprising amount of Japanese people who interpreted this title wrong. And number 3, this is an extremely frustrating interpretation, but I can't take it off the table. The intended meaning is for Z-Warrior to refer to both Bardock and Goku. I'm not saying that they're both valid, I'm saying that they're both correct. The evidence for this is the fact that in the title, Goku's name is written in kanji, but you're supposed to read it as Kakaroto. In other words, you could argue that when you read the title silently, Z-Warrior refers to Goku. But when you actually read it out loud and you say Kakaroto, then Z-Warrior refers to Bardock. This would be a pretty weird interpretation, but this whole Goku being read as Kakaroto thing is also pretty weird. So I can't say it's not possible. And the craziest thing is that no matter which of these scenarios is right, somebody is wrong and something needs to be fixed. Either every single English translation of this title needs to be fixed, or the Japanese version of this title needs to be fixed on those Japanese websites that use a space in between Z-Warrior and Kakarot. So I need you guys to help me out on this. If you know anybody in the Dragon Ball fandom who speaks Japanese at a high level, please share this with them. Show them this video. I want to get their opinion. For example, I would love to hear what Herms thinks about all this. So help me get some attention on this, and let's fix what needs to be fixed.